Hello and welcome to the 8th chapter of the HTML Complete course. Last week, we learned about forms, how to create it, and get knowledge about how to use various forms controls. We'll continue from where we left off in Chapter 8 Extra Markup. At this point, we have covered the main tags that fit nicely into groups and sections. In this chapter, we will focus on some helpful topics that are not easily grouped together. You will learn about how to add comments to your code, how to add information about the web page using the meta element, elements that are used to group together parts of the page where no other element is suitable, how to embed a page within a page using iFrames, adding characters such as angled, brackets, and copyright symbols. Doctypes. Because there have been several versions of HTML, each web page should begin with a doctype declaration to tell a browser which version of HTML the page is using, although browsers usually display the page even if it is not included. We will therefore be including one in each example for the rest of the book. Because XHTML was written in XML, you will sometimes see pages that use the XHTML strict doctype start with the optional XML declaration. Where this is used, it should be the first thing in a document. There must be nothing before it, not even a space. Comments in HTML. If you want to add a comment to your code that will not be visible in the user's browser, you can add the text between those characters. It is a good idea to add comments to your code because, no matter how familiar you are with the page at the time of writing it, when you come back to it later, or if someone else needs to look at the code, comments will make it much easier to understand. Although comments are not visible to users in the main browser window, they can be viewed by anyone who looks at the source code behind the page. On a long page, you will often see comments used to indicate where sections of the page start or end, and to pass on notes to help anyone who is looking at the code understand it. Comments can also be used around blocks of code to stop that code from being displayed in the browser. In the example, the email link has been commented out. ID attribute. Every HTML element can carry the ID attribute. It is used to uniquely identify that element from other elements on the page. Its value should start with a letter or an underscore, not a number or any other character. It is important that no two elements on the same page have the same value for their ID attributes, otherwise the value is no longer unique. For example, you might want to assign one paragraph within the page, perhaps a paragraph containing a pull quote, a different style than all of the other paragraphs. In the example, the paragraph with the id attributes whose value is pull quote is made uppercase using CSS. If you go on to learn about JavaScript, a language that allows you to add interactivity to your pages, ID attributes can be used to allow the script to work with that particular element. The ID attribute is known as a global attribute because it can be used on any element. Class attribute. Every HTML element can also carry a class attribute. Sometimes, rather than uniquely identifying one element within a document, you will want a way to identify several elements as being different from the other elements on the page. For example, you might have some paragraphs of text that contain information that is more important than others and want to distinguish these elements, or you might want to differentiate between links that point to other pages on your own site and links that point to external sites. To do this, you can use the class attribute. Its value should describe the class it belongs to. In the example, key paragraphs have a class attribute whose value is important. The class attribute on any element can share the same value. So, in this example, the value of important could be used on headings and links, too. Block elements. Some elements will always appear to start on a new line in the browser window. These are known as block level elements. Examples of block elements are h1, P, UL, and LI. Inline elements. Some elements will always appear to continue on the same line as their neighboring elements. These are known as inline elements. Examples of inline elements are A, B, EM, and IMG. Grouping text and elements in a block. The DIV element allows you to group a set of elements together in one block-level box. For example, you might create a DIV element to contain all of the elements for the header of your site, the logo and the navigation, or you might create a DIV element to contain comments from visitors. In a browser, the contents of the DIV element will start on a new line, but other than this it will make no difference to the presentation of the page. Using an id or class attribute on the DIV element, however, means that you can create CSS style rules to indicate how much space the DIV element should occupy on the screen and change the appearance of all the elements contained within it. It can also make it easier to follow your code if you have used DIV elements to hold each section of the page. Since there may be several other elements inside a DIV element, it can be helpful to add a comment after the closing DIV tag. Grouping text and elements inline. The span element acts like an inline equivalent of the DIV element. It is used to either contain a section of text where there is no other suitable element to differentiate it from its surrounding text, and second, contain a number of inline elements. The most common reason why people use span elements is so that they can control the appearance of the content of these elements using CSS. You will usually see that a class or id attribute is used with span elements to explain the purpose of this span element, so that CSS styles can be applied to elements that have specific values for these attributes. iFrames. iFrame. An iframe is like a little window that has been cut into your page, and in that window you can see another page. The term iframe is an abbreviation of inline frame. One common use of iframes, that you may have seen on various websites, is to embed a Google map into a page. The content of the iframe can be any HTML page, either located on the same server or anywhere else on the web. An iframe is created using the iframe element. There are a few attributes that you will need to know to use it. src. The src attribute specifies the URL of the page to show in the frame. Height. The height attribute specifies the height of the iframe in pixels. Width. The width attribute specifies the width of the iframe in pixels. Scrolling. The scrolling attribute will not be supported in HTML5. In HTML4 and XHTML, it indicates whether the iframe should have scroll bars or not. This is important if the page inside the iframe is larger than the space you have allowed for it, using the height and width attributes. Scroll bars allow the user to move around the frame to see more content. It can take one of three values: yes, to show scroll bars; no, to hide scroll bars; and auto, to show them only if needed. Frame border. The frame border attribute will not be supported in HTML5. In HTML4 and XHTML, it indicates whether the frame should have a border or not. A value of 0 indicates that no border should be shown. A value of 1 indicates that a border should be shown. Metadata. The meta tag defines metadata about an HTML document. Metadata is data about data. Meta tags always go inside the head element, and are typically used to specify character set, page description, keywords, author of the document, and viewport settings. Metadata will not be displayed on the page, but is machine parse-able. Metadata is used by browsers, how to display content or reload page, search engines, keywords, and other web services. First, name attribute has different values such as author, description, generator, keywords, viewport, which specifies a name for a metadata. HTTP equiv attribute provides an HTTP header for the information, value of the content attribute. In our example, HTTP equiv attribute has value refresh and its content value is 30. So, that meta tag will refresh page every 30 seconds. The viewport is the user's visible area of a web page. It varies with the device. It will be smaller on a mobile phone than on a computer screen. The width device width part sets the width of the page to follow the screen width of the device, which will vary depending on the device. The initial scale equals 1.0 part sets the initial zoom level when the page is first loaded by the browser. Escape characters. There are some characters that are used in and reserved by HTML code. Therefore, if you want these characters to appear on your page, you need to use what are termed escape characters, also known as escape codes or entity references. For example, to write a left-angled bracket, you can use either an LT or an #60. For an ampersand, you can use either an AMP or an #38. There are also special codes that can be used to show symbols such as copyright and trademark, currency symbols, mathematical characters, and some punctuation marks. For example, if you want to include a copyright symbol on a web page, you can use either an copy or an #169. Friends, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section and I will try to answer them. The notes and source code links can be found in the description below. Please, subscribe to the channel, it has inspired me to make a new video. Remember to like and share. Practice, set. Extra markup to begin. A doctype is used to indicate that this is an HTML4 web page. A meta tag describing the page's content can also be found in the head. Several elements identify their purpose by using the ID and class attributes. An escape code was used to insert the copyright symbol. DIV elements have been used to group sections of the page, and comments have been added to indicate what the DIV elements are closing. First, make a note of the doctype. Emmet will write full HTML syntax code if you just type an exclamation mark. Then insert the meta tag and its information. In this example, we will provide phone, email, and contact information. As a result, it has arrived at the content attribute. Change the title of our website. Make a DIV for the header. Use the UL and LI elements to add some menu items. Before that, use the H1 tag to add the page's heading. Using the A tag and the href attribute, connect all menus. As a result, when a user clicks on that menu, they will be redirected to other pages. After closing the DIV, add a comment. As a result, every coder who looks at the code can understand the purpose of a specific DIV. Then, for content, type 504. Using the P tag, add an address. Then, using the span element, add a phone number to the contact part. Finally, enter an email address and link it to that email using the href attribute. It is now time to add a map. Simply open a map and select the location you want to use. Then, under Share, navigate to Embed Map and copy the link. And then copy and paste that iFrames syntax into our code. The output can be seen on the right side. Finally, add the copyright symbol. So, finally, we've created our website. Let's go over some of the notes in the summary. Doctypes inform browsers about the HTML version you're using. Between the comments markers, you can add comments to your code. You can identify specific elements using the id and class attributes. You can use the DIV and span elements to group block level and inline elements together. iFrames insert windows into your web pages that allow other pages to be displayed. The meta tag allows you to provide a variety of information about your website. Escape characters are used to include special characters such as the left angle, right angle, and copyright symbol in your pages. That concludes Chapter 8 Extra Markup.